AITA for saying no when she expected me to pay for her entire family. She brought 6 family members to our dinner for 2 and gave me a surprise. So, I 27 male have been seeing this girl, Emily 25 female, for about 4 months now. Things were going well, like, really well. We met through mutual friends at a housewarming party, hit it off immediately, and started dating not long after. Emily was smart, funny, charming, and had that kind of warmth that makes you feel at ease. We would hang out a couple of times a week, do typical date stuff, coffee, dinners, movie nights, even a little hiking on weekends. We had great conversations, laughed a lot, and while we hadn't had any huge heart-to-heart talks about the future yet, I felt like we were building towards something real. Now, I'm a pretty low-maintenance guy, but I do like doing nice things once in a while. So after about 4 months of casual dates, I thought it would be fun to take Emily out somewhere nice, just the 2 of us. I wanted to level it up a bit. I picked this cozy, upscale Italian place I've been to a couple of times over the years. It's not pretentious, but definitely one of those places where you get dressed up a bit, maybe wear a button-down and shoes that aren't sneakers. I called ahead, made a reservation for 2, even got a haircut the day before. I really wanted to make it special. The day rolls around, and I show up right on time. I walk into the restaurant and glance around, expecting to find Emily waiting at a little 2-seater near the window or something. Instead, I'm greeted by a long table set for at least 8. Sitting there, already mid-conversation and sipping on wine, is Emily, along with her entire extended family. Her mom, dad, 2 sisters, 1 younger brother who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, her aunt, and a cousin who was already halfway through a plate of calamari. My face must have said everything, because when Emily saw me, she waved me over with a big grin and said, "Surprise. I thought this would be a great chance for you to meet everyone." I froze for a moment. I was completely thrown off. No heads up, no hint that anyone else would be joining us, and certainly not a whole family reunion. I felt like I'd been set up, like I'd walked into the wrong script. But I didn't want to be rude, so I smiled stiffly and sat down in the only empty seat, right between her aunt and her father, who gave me a polite but unreadable nod. I tried to play along, even though my brain was screaming at me that this wasn't right. From there, it only got worse. Her family was nice enough on the surface, but the vibe was weird. They weren't asking me questions or trying to get to know me, it felt more like an interview or a test. Her mother asked where I worked and then followed it up with a question about how much I made. Her sister asked if I rented or owned. Her dad stayed mostly quiet but occasionally gave me these long, measuring looks that made me feel like I was being appraised like cattle. I was polite, tried to keep the conversation light, but the entire time I was just trying to make sense of why Emily thought this was okay. And then came the food. Everyone ordered the most expensive things on the menu. Starters, drinks, steaks, seafood, desserts, no restraint whatsoever. I'm not exaggerating when I say it looked like they were trying to sample the entire menu. I stuck with a simple pasta and a soda because, frankly, I wasn't planning on dropping a few $100s on a dinner for 8. It was clear they weren't worried about the bill, which should have been a red flag in itself. When the check finally came, the waiter placed it discreetly at the end of the table. Nobody made a move. Not one person reached for their wallet. Then Emily slid the check over to me with a smile and said, "Babe's got it, right?" At first, I actually laughed. I thought she was joking. Surely she didn't expect me to cover an entire meal for 8 people without a word of warning. But the table went silent. No one else was laughing. Her dad looked at me like he was daring me to say no. Emily's smile stayed frozen, but her eyes were watching me closely. That's when it hit me, this wasn't a joke. She really expected me to pay for all of it. I sat there for a moment, took a deep breath, and said, as calmly as I could, that I would be paying for my portion only. I placed enough cash to cover my meal and a tip, stood up, and said it was nice meeting everyone, then left. I could feel the daggers in my back as I walked out. That night, Emily texted me a long paragraph about how I embarrassed her in front of her family, how I should have known that she wanted me to cover it as a gesture, and that it was disrespectful of me to walk out. I didn't reply right away. I needed time to process. All of my friends were unanimously on my side, they were shocked, even angry for me. Still, after a few days, I started wondering if I had overreacted. Maybe there was a cultural expectation I missed, or some family dynamic I didn't understand. So when Emily reached out again and said she wanted to clear the air, I agreed. We met up for coffee, and she apologized, kind of. She said she hadn't meant to put me on the spot, that she thought I'd be happy to show her family I was serious. I told her that I understood wanting me to meet her family, but that ambushing me at dinner with a huge bill was not the way to do it. We agreed to move past it, and I made it very clear that any future plans needed to be communicated clearly. A few weeks later, we decided to give the fancy dinner idea another try. Just us, a proper date. We picked a different restaurant this time, still nice, but not outrageously expensive. I asked her the day before, just to be sure, if it was going to be just the two of us, and she said absolutely. I should have known better. I show up, and once again, there's her entire family. Same people, same scenario. This time, they weren't even pretending to be surprised. Her mom waved at me like we were old friends, and her cousin asked if I was buying again. I didn't say a word. I turned around, walked right back out, and left. Emily started blowing up my phone before I had even reached the parking lot. She called me disrespectful, accused me of being selfish, told me that I had no idea how relationships worked. I blocked her number that night. Update 1. So after that second dinner disaster, the one where Emily showed up again with her entire family even after swearing it would be just us, I hit my limit. I walked out without saying a word, didn't respond to her barrage of texts and calls, and blocked her number. I needed space. I felt humiliated, manipulated, and honestly, kind of stunned that someone could disregard a clear boundary like that twice in a row. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about basic respect. The fact that she thought it was okay to set me up again, after pretending to apologize the first time, told me everything I needed to know. Or so I thought. A few days later, I unblocked her. Curiosity got the better of me, and I was still trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. I don't like loose ends, and part of me wanted to hear her out, not to rekindle anything, but just to understand what the hell that was. We finally talked. She sounded calm, more composed than I expected. She said I was being tested. Her words, not mine. Apparently, her family has this belief that if a man truly cares for a woman, really cares, he'll show generosity not just toward her, but toward her entire family. It's a tradition, according to her. They view it as a demonstration of commitment, of being able to provide. A sign that the guy is ready to step into a long-term, provider role. I told her flat out that I had no issue with generosity or being there for someone I care about, but springing it on me at dinner and expecting me to foot the bill for 8 people without warning. That's not tradition, that's a setup. She didn't argue with that. She just said, then come to one final dinner. It's important. Just one. I promise it'll make sense. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I don't know what I was hoping for, closure, maybe. Or just some explanation that would make all of this less insane. Something to help me walk away with peace of mind. So I went. It wasn't at a restaurant this time. It was at their house, a large, well-kept place on the outskirts of town. Emily gave me the address and told me to come at 6. When I pulled up, the driveway was full of cars, but everything seemed calm. I braced myself for awkwardness or tension, but when I walked in, it was surprisingly chill. Warm lighting, soft music playing, the smell of homemade food wafting through the air. Her mom greeted me at the door with a smile. Her dad gave me a nod. Everyone else was already gathered around a large dining table, and to be honest, the setup was beautiful. Candles, matching plates, even folded napkins. I didn't know if it was a peace offering or another trap, but I was there, so I decided to just roll with it. Dinner was, no exaggeration, phenomenal. Someone in that family could really cook. There were roast chickens, potatoes, fresh bread, wine, homemade desserts. The vibe was far more relaxed than the previous disasters. People were smiling, laughing, making small talk. Nobody grilled me with questions or acted cold. For a moment, I let my guard down. I even started to wonder if this was their way of apologizing. Maybe this was their attempt at showing that they did value me, but just had a strange way of going about it. After dessert, things shifted. Emily's dad stood up, walked out of the room, and returned a minute later holding a folded piece of paper. He walked over to me, handed it to me wordlessly, then returned to his seat. I opened it. It was an itemized bill from a local catering company, printed and everything. $684. Every item from dinner was listed out, from the roast chickens to the tiramisu. I stared at it for a second, thinking it had to be some sort of joke. I looked up, and her dad was just sitting there with his arms crossed. Emily was watching me closely. Then she nodded, like this was totally normal. Like I should have been expecting it. Her dad said something like, "This is your chance to show us who you really are." I looked at Emily again. She didn't look embarrassed. She didn't look conflicted. She looked like someone following a script she'd read 100 times before. Like this was a rite of passage. Her mom chimed in, saying, "If you want to be with our daughter, you need to show you can take care of her. That's what this is about." I sat there, stunned. These people had literally cooked me a meal just to hand me a bill at the end of it. Not because they needed help. Not because they were poor or struggling. Their house was beautiful. Their clothes were designer. This wasn't about money, it was about control. About some twisted tradition that expected boyfriends to prove their worth with cash. I folded the paper back up, placed it on the table, stood up, and said, "Then you can take care of this check." And I left. Update 2. 3 days after that bizarre dinner at Emily's house, the one where her dad handed me a literal itemized bill for a home-cooked family meal, I was still shaking my head in disbelief. I kept replaying the night in my head, trying to convince myself I hadn't hallucinated the whole thing. I couldn't. It happened. The folded check, the expectant stares, Emily nodding like she was proud of this ridiculous stunt. I had walked out, said what I needed to say, and blocked her number again without hesitation. I figured that was it. I'd dodged a bullet, maybe even a cannonball, and that was where the story ended. I expected radio silence going forward, but instead, on the third day, I got a DM on Instagram from someone named Jenna. I didn't recognize the name at first, but the profile picture clicked. It was Emily's cousin, the one who had already been halfway through an appetizer at the first dinner ambush. Her message was short, "Hey, can we talk for a minute?" I didn't respond. I wasn't in the mood. I'd already wasted enough emotional energy on Emily and her family. But then a minute later, she sent a voice note. I didn't really want to hear it, but curiosity won out. I hit play. Her voice was soft but serious. She said, "Not all of us are like that. I just wanted you to know what's really going on." Now I was listening. I messaged her back, asked what she meant, and that cracked open the dam. Turns out this whole test thing wasn't some deep-rooted family tradition passed down through generations. It wasn't cultural. It wasn't even something Emily had grown up with. It was all made up by her mother. Completely fabricated. A manipulation strategy disguised as tradition. According to Jenna, Emily's previous boyfriend had been wealthy, like, luxury car, 5-star vacations, never look at a price tag wealthy. He would throw money around constantly. Fancy dinners, gifts, covering everyone's tabs. He made a big impression on the family, especially on Emily's mom. When that relationship ended, due to reasons Jenna didn't know or didn't want to say, Emily's mom apparently took it hard. She had seen the financial security that guy brought to the table and convinced herself that this was now the standard. She didn't want Emily to settle for anything less than another provider. Not a partner. A provider. So when Emily started dating again, her mom started crafting these little tests. At first it was subtle, suggesting the boyfriend pay for group outings, or asking him to help with random family expenses. But over time it escalated. It became deliberate. Planned. Like a ritual. Jenna said Emily was actually caught off guard the first time. She didn't know her mom had invited the whole family to our fancy Italian dinner. She had genuinely expected it to be just us. But once her mom spun it as a kind of loyalty test, proof that I was serious, Emily caved. She had been raised to prioritize family harmony. She didn't want to push back. Her mom had already convinced her that letting the family down once was bad enough. Doing it again would be selfish. So she let it happen. The second time. That one she knew about. She didn't just let it happen, she played along. Jenna told me she didn't agree with it, but Emily's mom kept reinforcing the same idea, that a real man would step up, that this was a rare opportunity to weed out the weak ones. And that's where it got really wild. Apparently, I wasn't the first guy they tried this on. I was the third. The first guy had money and didn't blink. He paid for everything and more, but ended things after a few months. Jenna said he got tired of the constant expectations and realized that Emily's mom was treating him like a bank account. The second guy just ignored the whole thing. He didn't pay, didn't react, and ghosted Emily 2 days later. Then came me. I was the one who said no, but didn't disappear. I challenged it. I stuck around long enough to question it. That's when they thought I could be trained. That was the word Jenna used. Trained. It wasn't about seeing if I was generous. It was about wearing me down. Seeing if I could be slowly reshaped into the kind of man who would pay without question. Conditioned into believing that generosity meant obedience. That love was measured in dollars, and that the more I gave, the more serious I was. Jenna told me she thought the whole thing was messed up. She said she didn't like being part of it, that she felt uncomfortable every time it happened. She said it wasn't right to ambush people, manipulate them, and then shame them for reacting like humans. She told me Emily used to be different, more independent, more assertive, but ever since the breakup with the rich ex, her mom had her on a leash. Every boyfriend was a new audition. Every dinner was a test. Jenna said she watched that night, the catered dinner with the bill, and saw how stunned I looked. She saw the way Emily avoided my eyes, how her hands trembled a little when her dad placed the check in front of me. She said Emily was scared. Not of me. Of disappointing them. Of not living up to the version of herself her mom had constructed. And then Jenna said she was sorry. Update 3. About a week after Jenna and I had that conversation, the one where she finally gave me the full behind-the-scenes look at what really went down with Emily's family, I got another message from Emily. I wasn't expecting it. We had already closed the chapter, or at least I thought we had. But there it was, a new message sitting in my inbox. I opened it with hesitation, fully prepared for another guilt trip or some half-hearted justification. But that's not what it was. This time, it was different. Emily's message wasn't long, but it was real. The tone was different from anything I'd seen from her before, less defensive, more self-aware. She told me she had been reflecting a lot on what happened, especially after Jenna had confronted her about the whole mess. She admitted that her mother had manipulated her, pushed her, guilt-tripped her, and gaslit her into believing the absurd tests were some kind of ancient family tradition that needed to be honored. She admitted that she hadn't realized just how toxic the whole situation was until it all blew up in her face. She said she had spent the last few days really sitting with it. Really thinking. She apologized, not the kind of apology that deflects or tries to minimize things, but a genuine one. She said she felt awful about the first dinner, about blindsiding me, about not stopping it when she had the chance. She told me that when her dad handed me that catering bill, she realized just how far her family had dragged her from her own values. That moment was apparently the wake-up call she needed. She offered to pay me back for the first dinner, down to the last dollar. Said it was the least she could do after everything I'd been put through. I told her to keep it. At this point, it wasn't about the money. It never really was. It was about the principle, the manipulation, the complete lack of communication and respect. She told me she was starting to set boundaries with her family. That she knew it wouldn't be easy, but she wanted to take back control of her life. She said she understood now why things went the way they did, and that she didn't blame me for walking away. That she respected it. We didn't have some emotional reunion. We didn't pretend like we were going to fix things and get back together. We just left it there, on a note of mutual understanding. She said what she needed to say. I listened. And we parted ways, this time for good, but on decent terms. We weren't enemies. We just weren't right for each other. At least not under the weight of all that dysfunction. And that could have been the end of it. But life's weird like that. Because while all that was happening, something else had been quietly unfolding in the background. Something I hadn't really expected to go anywhere. Something that started small, and honest, and kind of by accident. Jenna and I had stayed in touch. It wasn't romantic at first. Not even close. After she messaged me about the tests, we talked a bit more, mostly just random, casual stuff. Music, memes, weird family stories, observations about how absurdly complicated people can make relationships when they forget to be human. She had this dry, slightly irreverent sense of humor that made even the most mundane conversation fun. And she never tried to explain things away or protect her family's behavior. She just acknowledged the dysfunction for what it was and owned the fact that she wanted nothing to do with it. Eventually, we met up for coffee. It wasn't a date. Just two people who had been caught up in a ridiculous situation and came out the other side with the same sense of, what the hell just happened? But that coffee turned into two coffees. Then lunch. Then dinner. It was easy. That's the word I keep coming back to. Easy. No weird pressure. No games. No vague emotional tests disguised as dinner invitations. Just two people talking, laughing, learning about each other without trying to mold the other into something predetermined. Jenna was thoughtful in a way that snuck up on you. She wasn't flashy, didn't try to impress, but she listened. She remembered details. She cared. And there was no performance in it. By the second time we went out, it hit me how rare that was. How comfortable I felt. It was like I could finally exhale, like I wasn't walking into something that had already been decided for me by someone else. It was just, normal. Refreshingly, beautifully normal. She told me she had always hated the unspoken expectations that swirled around her family. That she was the black sheep because she refused to play along. She had watched what happened to Emily with frustration, saw her get slowly reshaped to fit a mold that wasn't hers, and hated every second of it. She tried to intervene, gently, here and there, but there's only so much you can do from the sidelines. With me, she didn't have to be cautious. She was open, direct, and incredibly self-aware. And I found myself really, genuinely enjoying her company. Not because she was connected to this insane story, but in spite of it. If anything, what she'd been through made her stronger. Sharper. More grounded. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, no, we didn't rush into anything. There was no whirlwind rebound romance or movie-worthy love confession. It's been slow. Careful. Real. But I can say this with total clarity, it's good. It's really good. It's the kind of connection where I'm not constantly questioning someone's motives or waiting for the next weird thing to drop. I'm not sitting across from her wondering if this dinner is a test. I'm not walking on eggshells trying to pass some invisible checklist. It's just two people figuring it out. One step at a time. So yeah, that's where things stand now. Emily and I are on good terms. No bad blood, no resentment. She's doing her thing, figuring herself out, hopefully putting up the walls she needs to protect herself from the parts of her family that tried to hijack her life. I wish her well. And Jenna? She's been a surprise in all the best ways. No drama, no surprise dinners, no tests, just peace.